So, welcome again. And what I started to say is that this meditation practice leading to deep insight has more to do when what we don't do than what we do. There's a lot of ways in which we are so actively involved in our minds and our thoughts that it interferes with the natural capacity for insight. And one of the core principles almost of Buddhism is that we have a profound natural capacity, profound natural abilities that we're learning to get out of the way of. And the analogy would be if you were going to go canoe comfortably down a comfortable, safe, nice, slow, narrow river, maybe a stream, a creek, and so there's a few things you have to do. You have to untie the canoe from the dock, and you have to release your hand from holding onto the dock, and then you have to somehow stay in the middle. And you don't want to reach out to the side and hold on to a branch coming down. If you see a sandbar up ahead, you want to avoid getting stuck on it. So there's a few things we have to do. But there's a natural capacity, if we stay in the middle of the river, to float and carry on. Same way with this meditation practice. And the world of insight is what opens up when we let go of the dock, we untie the rope, we allow ourselves to flow in the river. And the way that we grab onto branches and get caught on sandbars is by thinking a lot. And thinking and living in concepts, living in attitudes, are what kind of solidifies or reifies or makes the world solid, makes the self solid, rather than the self being fluid and moving and constantly shifting and changing in a free, liberated way. Through the conceptual world and through our attachments and our fears and our resistances and our wantings, we kind of solidify, and it's hard to see the change. We form that big tangle, that big knot, where experiences, sensations, direct contact with the world is entangled with our concepts of it, and entangled with ideas of self, entangled with our attitudes and our desires, our aversions. And so things get all globbed together. And so it seems like there's something solid here and permanent, and this is the way it's going to be forever. But we let go, we untie the rope from the dock, we learn to trust deeply, and it's almost like it's what we don't do. It's a lot of letting go, not because we're letting go into nothing. We're letting go into this natural capacity to flow and to move and to flow into a really good direction. The metaphor of the flowing in the river is used in Buddhism to go from small little streamlets and creeks that flow into bigger lakes, into bigger rivers, and finally flows into the big ocean. And so this idea that the flow of impermanence, the flow of the changing nature in the river of change, it's not just that itself is not a static thing. That moves on to better and better. But the cost, in a sense, of doing this is to let go, is to let go, untie from the dock of concepts and ideas, of past and present, and also to untie ourselves from or let go of holding on to the branches of self, the branches of ideas and philosophies and of self that we might be carrying along. So it's a lot about not doing, and when we don't do, we'll feel and see that the river is flowing. We'll flow with it. So the insight are what comes. Deep insight comes when we're no longer holding on to something. So to assume a meditation posture, if you get into a canoe, you kind of have to be in a good posture of balance in the middle, upright. Can't be leaning one side to the other. You can't sunbathe laying down in the canoe if you want to stay flowing in the river and tracking what's going on. So to take a good posture and to close your eyes, and without doing anything else, as you're sitting, as you're in your meditation posture, can you feel the hum of sensations, the vibration of life? Can you sense or observe the way that so much is changing and shifting in you as you just sit here doing nothing, being still? Even if you're preoccupied with thoughts, the images, the words are coming and going and shifting. Rather than looking at the content of thoughts, now notice how the details of thinking belong to a world of change, changing words, changing sentences, changing images. And whatever degree of change you can experience here, now in the middle of it all, from deep within, begin a comfortable, fuller inhale and a longer, easeful exhale. With whatever sense of ease you can have, easefully take just a bigger, fuller breath that keeps the ease. And a longer, slower exhale that settles you into an inner ease. And then letting your breathing return to normal. Right there in the breathing, the body's experience of breathing, you can observe change, shifting. You might not see the changing sensations of breathing if you hold your breath. But if you allow the natural rhythm of breathing, there'll be a natural shifting and changing, flowing river of sensations. Physical sensations associated with breathing. And if you lose touch with that because you're thinking a lot, then those thoughts are going to interfere with seeing change. Those thoughts put you in a world of holding on to a branch still being tied to the dock. Relax the thinking mind and settle yourself into the canoe of your body. Where awareness is settled in your body, riding the river of change. All things are changing unless we get caught up in thoughts, or we get caught in ideas and feeling of self. Trust the river of change. When awareness is pulled into the world of thinking, the world of clinging, holding on, then the awareness cannot rest in the river of change, the changing sensations, the changing energies of the present moment. Let go, and let go so you can rest, float in the river of change. And then as we come to the end of this sitting, perhaps relaxing a few moments into whatever is shifting and changing in your direct experience, not chasing it or looking for it, but allowing it to move through you. Allow it to show itself to you. We're opening and relaxing and receiving change. I can highlight how we get out of the river. We get stuck in the river when we get caught in thoughts. And a lot of preoccupation and thoughts clearly separates us from a deeper intimacy with a natural process of Dharma unfolding. The river carrying us along. As it grows and flows and opens up to greater and greater happiness and peace. May we appreciate how letting go of preoccupations and attachments gives room for a deeper, healthy process to unfold. Deeper peace, happiness. And may we understand that this works interpersonally too. That we can bring kind, respectful attention to others, where they don't have to react to how we are, don't have to cling or resist or want. May it be that our way of being with others helps them to relax, helps what's the natural capacity for peace that they have as a chance to unfold. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. Thank you. So hello and welcome to this series on insight, the kind of insight that we emphasize in insight meditation. And this is the end of this week's topic that covers the 5 different areas that we can call, that involve insight, that we might define or describe as having insight into something. And the way that it unfolds is that the way that this week has been discussed is that there is that one way of understanding that. I got distracted. Someone came here. That that it unfolds kind of as a process. There's an unfolding here, just like Samadhi is an unfolding. And this, one of the reasons to give the whole series on Samadhi before insight is that we can understand better, appreciate better, how the unfolding of insight, the deepening of insight, is a form of Samadhi itself. And some of the qualities and characteristics of Samadhi come into play as we go along here. And so the first insight from Monday, the personal insight, is very valuable to have. But from the point of view of the Samadhi of insight, it's settling personal issues enough that we can give ourselves over to the process of meditation. We don't have to be concerned about fixing something or healing anything in ourselves, because now we can kind of settle enough on ourselves that we can kind of go into this process. And so as we go deeper, then into it, part of this is to get quiet enough, calm enough, that we can see the distinction between appearances and the recognition of them, the mental knowing of them. The simple way of saying it is the sense experience we have, which belongs to direct experience, and to the names we have, the concepts, the recognition we have for it. So we tease those apart for the purpose of being able to see even more clearly each thing, so we don't have everything kind of lumped together in one big general conceptual way. And so then that allows us to see conditionality. And that's invaluable, because then we see that it makes a difference how we are. That we do condition ourselves, that if we get caught up in thoughts and hostility or greed, that has an effect on us that is not so beneficial. If we let go and are settled and open up more fully there in a kind, supportive way, that has a beneficial effect on us. So conditionality helps us to see that how we engage is beneficial, and a lot of it has to do with appreciating how powerful it is, meaningful it is, to not be caught, not be tight around or resisting or having attitudes of aversion or judgments or despair or all kinds of things that are added on top of our experience. And then as we move on further, then we start seeing much more appreciation of how things are always changing, and how the idea of self doesn't have to be so applied to it, projected onto all our experiences, that they all are my experience, or they all have some reference back to me. And so there's a beginning to understand, an understanding of how changeable things are, how things flow and are impermanent and constant, and how it's possible to be in that world without a lot of self-preoccupation, self-consciousness. And self doesn't have to be defining everything in its own terms. And that to do so is unsatisfactory, brings more suffering. And so as we move along here with insight, at some point we enter into the approach stage that we have with Samadhi, approaching into jhana. And so as we keep going here, there's a feeling of an onward leading movement this is good, this is the right place to be. And some of the jhanic factors come into play. There starts to be some joy and happiness in the mindfulness practice itself, in the clear seeing, being there present for experience in this more direct way that is so direct and so immediate. It's much more of an observation, a seeing, a sensing, a receiving, than sometimes it is when people practice mindfulness, where the mindfulness does involve kind of a higher order level of recognition. Now the recognition or the knowing is really simple, really immediate, and not a wider understanding that this applies to all of life. And we start entering into a very direct experiential sensing, feeling, knowing, observing of how all the building blocks of all the concepts, building blocks of sensations that we have, that they're all coming and going. They're they're constantly a flow of change, of arising and passing. And that's a classic language as we enter into the stage of things just arising and passing. And in this stage, we've kind of, in this approach stage, it enters into something that's something like comparable to the first jhana, in that the mind is not really going to wander off anymore. It's not a lot of work to be present. It doesn't have to keep coming back. Now, we're in the flow of the samadhi. We're in it, and you might wander off a little bit, but you're coming back easily. Just here. It's like this massage of going away and coming back and being here. And rather than being absorbed in a samadhi, in like joy or something, there might be joy, there might be happiness, there might be many of the factors that happen in samadhi, but it's a very clear that we're observing, that we're present for the shifting and changing nature of reality, of our direct experience of it. And so now we're entering into the world of what classically is called the three characteristics. And that is the big emphasis, the for insight meditation, for vipassana. The capital I insight is a deep seeing, a deep experiencing, a deep direct sensing of the arising and passing of sensations, the rising and passing of thoughts, the rising and passing of everything, that we start to see it comes and goes and comes and goes. And so that's the characteristic of all experience is impermanent. The second is that in all this direct, immediate experience of sensations, we cannot find a self. Sometimes it's called, the characteristic of not self. And the third is dukkha, and that there's some profound form of suffering, of unsatisfactoriness in any movement of the mind to hold on, to resist, to want anything to do with all these sensations that are moving through. So there's a higher sensitivity. Now, in the modern Theravada, it's called the three characteristics. In the time of the Buddha, these were called the three perceptions, or the three recognitions, and sanya. And and that makes a huge difference, because when it started becoming called characteristics, then the three characteristics, there was a tendency to make into a kind of Buddhist metaphysics philosophy, that now we're seeing the true characteristics of everything in the universe. All things, everything in the universe is impermanent and constant. Everything is not self. Everything is suffering. And that kind of universalization of these three characteristics is not useful for deepening the practice. And maybe not even, it's going in a different direction than the Buddha really wanted us to go. If we come back and understand them as the three perceptions, the three characteristics, the focus is three recognitions. The focus is not on the nature of what's out there, but rather the nature of how we perceive it. So if I hold this bell and I tell you, wow, this bell is impermanent and it's constantly shifting and changing and coming and going. This bell is not self. This bell is suffering. You'd probably think I was a little crazy. But what's inconstant is that my perception of the bell turns out that yes, the bell has a certain constancy, but the mental activity of perceiving, of recognizing the bell, is a shifting and changing flow of sand and flow of river. The idea that this is my bell, that's a mental concept as well. That's a mental perception, recognition. Seeing that idea of this is my bell, seeing it come and go, and it rises out of conditions. There's no self that makes that thought, that this is my bell. It's just this thought that arises. And so there's no self in that thought, exactly. And there's no self that I'm projecting now onto the bell. And then there's a suffering when I say it's my bell, I want this bell, I should have it. So there can be, we perceive the suffering in relationship to it. So there's these three very profound ways of perceiving or recognizing the movements of the mind that take things as being permanent or constant, take things as me, myself, and mine, that take things as this is the source of happiness if I just hold on to it and cling to it. And rather than that, there's in this kind of samadhi state, almost as you go deeper into this, almost jhanic state. So remember, we're going to a deeper state. This is where we start perceiving in a deep, deep way. We observe in a deep way. It's so satisfying because we're in this nice state. It's an onward leading state. We see that everything, the flow of change, the river of change, everything, that all perception, all sensing, all acts of knowing, all those are shifting and changing and moving and coming and going. Whether or not there's a bell out here which has some constancy, that is besides the point. The world of freedom belongs to this world of not making this into a permanent thing, not taking the perception of the mind and making this mine, not suffering because I want to cling to it and want it. The mind's activities are inconstant. In a certain kind of way, the mind's individual activities is not self. There's no self in those activities, and it's suffering to cling. It's suffering. You can see the suffering of how we relate to it, things, if we look deeply into the mind. And so these are some. But in this fifth insight, to really have it as deep inside itself, it is a kind of samadhi, deep samadhi, where we've cleared the veils of perception so that we can really see deeply into the mind and see what the mind does, that it projects permanence, projects self, and in a kind of certain way, not doesn't project but creates suffering. In the deep samadhi, then we start seeing the opposite. We see, yes, we're in sensing the inconstant nature of perception or recognition, the inconstant nature of the not self nature of perception, we see that there's suffering in how we relate to it and how we can let go. And this letting go, this not participating in this deep way, allows for a deeper and deeper entering into a deeper, deeper samadhi. And my teacher in Burma sometimes called this vipassana jhana, in this deeper way. And so in understanding, appreciating there's samadhi here, you might understand that the thinking mind has gotten really quiet. And the filters of concepts by which we see has dropped away. So these are the 5 areas which insight comes into play as we do this mindfulness practice. And for the next 2 weeks, I'll be away on retreat. And I'll pick this up again when I come back, I think on the 16th of June. And we'll do a week on each of these 3 perceptions, called 3 characteristics in the modern world, and appreciate kind of a deepening process that happens with each of these 3 perceptions, these 3 insights. So thank you very much, and I look forward to coming back in a couple of weeks.